UFC 283, Glover Teixeira, Jamahal Hill. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zahn, I go by Harris. As usual, we give you fight-by-fight breakdowns, fight-by-fight analysis from that betting perspective specifically. So we want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which underdogs have a shot, some parlay action towards the end of the video as well, which fights are not worth it, all of those different betting perspectives when it comes to taking a look at these fights. Busy one for this one, UFC 283, 15 fights overall. So we're going to get right to work. Before we start our breakdowns, make sure you follow the page here at Boxing MMA Picks. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video and make sure you participate in the comments. But let's get started. First fight of our prelims. We have 10 prelim fights, so let's get right to it. Fight number one is Saimon Oliveira versus Daniel Marcos. Daniel Marcos is an undefeated newcomer. He's coming from Dana White Contender Series. Pretty rangy on the feet. He's sharp, good technique, good calf kick, good IQ as well from what I've seen from him. Good takedown defense as well. Good ability to get back up if he is taken down. But of course, not limited footage per se, but you're going to find less footage on him than you will have on Saimon Oliveira, who's been in the UFC for a little bit of time now. He had a UD loss to Tony Gravely back in January. More of a Muay Thai background. He fights pretty tall, looks pretty comfortable with his stand-up. Good amount of switch stance included in his stand-up as well. Good amount of kicks. He can be pretty dynamic with the striking. You look at his record, they're 18-4. 11 of those 18 wins are via submission. Even in that loss to Tony Gravely, he definitely showed that he'll attempt the submissions. I think he's a much better grappler than he is a wrestler, per se. So he's going to kind of put himself out there or attempt submissions in bad positions and things like that, as opposed to relying on some kind of takedown game. I think it's a close fight to start us off. I'm slightly favoring the newcomer, Daniel Marcos, on this. Reason being, I feel like his striking may be a little bit more cleaner, a little bit more intentional in terms of trying to win rounds with his striking. I mentioned Saimon Oliveira has those submission threats, but again, I don't feel like he does much to set up the takedowns effectively. He kind of just goes for it, kind of goes for broke in a lot of ways. I think most of this fight, as a result, is going to occur on the feet. And like I said, Marcos has shown me enough for me to think that he's slightly better in terms of his striking. So I'm going to start us off going with the UFC newcomer, Daniel Marcos.
Yeah, this is a tough fight, man. When I was looking at these guys are both off the Contender Series. Both of them had good fights on the Contender Series. Saimon Oliveira was fighting a beast. I think his name was Boudet, a guy that was digging through his body. Simon's able to get it to the mat in the first and the third round. He's able to get the win, right? It was a really close fight. When you look at Daniel Marcos' fight in the Contender Series, I'm pretty sure I was actually betting that week, that day on that Tuesday. He was the underdog in his fight, and I actually thought the opponent wasn't going to get it done, but Daniel came back after like a 2-year layoff, looked like a much better fighter. He kept the fight on the feet. He stopped all the takedowns. The opponent was supposed to be the guy supposed to have a grappling advantage, and Daniel pretty much stuffed the takedowns, kept it on the feet, attacked the legs. The opponent's legs are really damaged in the fight. A couple times his legs buckled. This guy's a really technical fighter, and in his last fight from his fight before that, there's a 2-3 year gap. He's a completely different fighter from that time till now. So it's a tough fight because when you look at it, though, like historically, Brazil has a high win percentage against the rest of South America. So countries like Argentina, Peru, even if you go to Central America where Mexico is, Brazil beats these guys. Like they beat these Spanish countries, and this is another situation where we have a Brazilian in Saimon Oliveira versus a Peruvian. Usually the Brazilian just gets it done, and it's in Brazil. So this is a close fight, can go either way. Simon's going to have the grappling advantage, the jiu-jitsu advantage. But I'm going to actually roll with Daniel Marcos here, keeping it on the feet. I think he's going to be a bit bigger, 5'7" to 5'4". The reach really doesn't help him on his side. But the way he mixes it up, the leg kicks, it's gonna, if it stays on the feet, he wins the fight. But again, Saimon is game. He's gonna shoot for takedowns. If he gets Marcos against the cage, so Marcos needs to avoid the cage. Against the cage, I noticed that's where Saimon gets a lot of his takedowns. So open mat in the open area, he's not as good as with his takedowns. And in his last fight, he got taken down to like 10, 11 times against Gravely. So Marcos might be able to get some takedowns here as well. Close fight. They're in Brazil. The Brazilians should get it done, but I'm going to roll with Daniel Marcos here. Really like his striking. I really like his improvements from his last two fights to his last fight. And I think he has a chance to get it done here. But again, I think this is 50-50.
Second fight, we're looking at Josiane Nunes versus Zara Fairn. Josiane Nunes, unanimous decision win over Ramona Pascual. That was back in February. She's 2-0 in the UFC now. She's on an 8-fight winning streak. Southpaw, that style is kind of wild, a bit of a brawler type, although her pacing is going to allow for her to sort of effectively pressure rather than just being completely reckless. Good overhand left as a southpaw. She'll throw in the calf kick as well. Has power for sure. 7 of her 9 wins are via KO, TKO. Has that toughness factor too. She can take a hit. Has a consistent pace. And, she showed in her last fight that she's as much of a threat in round 3 as she is in round 1. So it's pretty impressive that she's able to keep up that pace. Zara Fairn, on the other hand, 0-2 in the UFC. Stiff competition, albeit, though she hasn't fought in nearly 2 years. So it's going to be very interesting to see what she looks like 2 years later. She's very long, bit stiff with her stand-up. She has a long jab, long 1-2 combinations. Her stand-up is fairly basic, though, right? Even looks kind of green in the stand-up to some degree. Both of her UFC losses have occurred on the ground. She doesn't really have the best takedown defense. She doesn't really have the best knowledge on the ground in general. And again, this one's really interesting because we see Josiane Nunes as a big favorite here. And in a lot of ways, you want to say Josiane Nunes all day. We don't know what Zara Fairn is going to look like after almost 2 years, right? But at the same time, 6-4, 36 years old. She's not a fighter that I anticipate changing a lot, right? So I'm going to go based on what I've previously seen from Fairn, and I'm going to anticipate that she doesn't make much improvements in the time that she's been off. And ultimately, that's going to lead me to being Josiane Nunes all day on this one. Despite the height disadvantage, despite the reach disadvantage, I don't see Fairn being able to handle the constant pressure that Nunes is going to throw her way. So I'm looking at Josiane Nunes. Now, she's a huge favorite, minus 550. I'm going to say avoid it from a betting perspective because there are some variables with how Fairn is going to look. But this is a Brazil event. They're going to set up most of the Brazilian fighters to get wins. Won't surprise me if Nunes has no problem winning, just too steep of odds for me to touch it.
Yeah, this looks like a showcase fight. Zara Fairn is she's trash. Like, she's not good, right? Like, if you look at the people that she's fought, she has 2 wins in her record, and those 2 people aren't good as well. If you look at the people that they fought, and if you watch the video on these fights, you'll see that she really hasn't beaten anyone that's good. And in fights where she's fighting people that are below her, she makes those fights close. You know what I'm saying? So fighting out of France, she's supposed to be a striker. She doesn't really have a ground game, so she's looking to strike. She's going to be the bigger girl. But Nunes has pop, man. This girl has power. She has that, like, it's surprising for a woman fighter to have that knockout power. Like, pound for pound, she's probably top 5 in the UFC in woman punching power. And I think she's going to knock this girl out, man. Like, again, Zara Fairn, I hope I'm saying the name right. I really do. But she is, she's not UFC level. And I think this is a showcase. I think Nunes gets her out of there.
Third fight of our prelims, we have a good one. Warlley Alves versus Nicolas Dalby. Welterweight fight here. For Warlley Alves, it's been a year and a half since he last fought. That's when he lost to Jeremiah Wells at that time. He was beaten up pretty badly in that one. So the time off, I don't mind it. from that perspective. We look at his record there. Most of his 15 wins have come via finish. So that's going to let you know the type of fighter he is. He can definitely be explosive early in his fights. 3-time Brazilian kickboxing champion. So again, stylistically, going to tell you the type of fighter that he is. Has that nasty leg kick, but he can also land takedowns, right? He can also grapple. He's a tough opponent for a lot of fighters. If there is one downside to him is that he does lose a lot of steam after that first round. And that could be a problem versus Nicolas Dalby. Dalby beat Claudio Silva back in July. Also has that kickboxing style, almost karate-like stance in a lot of ways. Pretty light on his feet to that point. A lot of in and out movement, a lot of fakes and feints, some switch stance as well. He can initiate that brawling type of style. He can come in using combinations and using pressure. And he puts up just over a takedown per fight. So not that it's an active part of his game, but he will definitely shoot for takedowns, and he has the ability to land it. A solid active top control to go along with it. It's a close one. There's things to like about both fighters. I think Alves is better and more dangerous with respect to his striking. I think either guy can land a takedown. But we look at Warlley Alves having 80% takedown defense, whereas Dalby has just 65%. So I think both of them can shoot for takedowns, but Alves is more likely to land the takedown. I think the key factor here is that, so I mentioned the striking being more dangerous for Alves, Alves potentially having the wrestling advantage as well, or the takedown advantage. But the key X factor for Nicolas Dalby is that, he has that dog in him, right? He has that toughness factor, that ability to keep pushing a tiring pace. I feel like he's going to have a key cardio advantage in this fight. And I think if we see a firefight in round 1, then this fight will start to favor Dalby in rounds 2 and in rounds 3. But I like Warlley Alves here. Again, I think he's the better striker with the ability to keep it on the feet. I don't think there's going to be issues with pacing. I'm not overly concerned that Dalby's cardio is miles ahead of Alves's or something like that. And I expect Alves to get back into the win column, right? He's the better overall fighter, in my opinion. And I think he's going to get back into the win column again, fighting at home in Brazil.
So who are you going with?
Warlley Alves.
Okay, yeah, this is the type of fight where every card has this whenever it's a pay-per-view. You can't really even after you break down the fights and you break down what each fighter is good at, you can't really trust either guy at all. So this is a tough fight for me. We know that Warlley Alves is going to have the jiu-jitsu advantage in this fight. He's going to have the fight-ending power in this fight. He can knock Dalby out. He definitely can put him out of there. But again, as you mentioned, that first round, right? It's kind of like that Punahele Soriano style, where not as bad as Punahele, but in a sense that once it gets out of that first round, and once the fight gets a little sweaty, Warlley Alves kind of slows down, and he has shown that in a lot of his fights. Where Dalby, he can go 3 rounds, and he can kind of. The only problem with Dalby is he's chinny. He's been knocked out recently, and he's kind of predictable with his striking when he does strike. But he does have a well-rounded game. In this fight, he's not going to have the grappling advantage. But I just believe he survives, as you mentioned, that toughness. I think he survives that first round. He might even win that first round. But as the fight goes on, I think it's going to go Dalby's way. Warlley, to me, he quits, man. He quits in fights. And again, this is a fight that is 50-50 as the odds indicate. But I'm going to go with the guy that I think is tougher. Survive that first round. He might not be the more powerful guy. But as the fight goes on, I think he's going to have a higher activity, and I think he gets it done. So I'm going to go with Nicolas Dalby.
All right, let's take a look at fight number 4. Ismael Bonfim versus Terrance McKinney. For Terrance McKinney, beat Eric Gonzalez back in August. We know is kind of his MO at this point, finish or be finished, right? 13 wins, 100% of them are via finish. All 4 of his losses are via finish as well. Southpaw on the feet, switch stance, really dangerous hands early in the fight, has that aggressive pace. dangerous striker in general because he is super explosive. And he has that wrestling as well, right? Good takedown accuracy, 100% takedown defense in the UFC to this point. However, his cardio has shown to be a serious red flag. Once he's gassed out, he's prone to making a lot of errors. Whereas Ismael Bonfim is making his UFC debut. He's on a 12-fight winning streak. Fought in Dana White Contender Series, fought in the LFA before that. Good, clean style of striking, good timing, good striking diversity, good striking IQ. Also has good power. You know, he can be really explosive in his own right with really effective combinations. He's precise. He's pretty accurate. He picks his shots well. He's shown me good takedown defense as well. Just a well-rounded fighter in what he has shown so far. The cardio is good as well. This fight is going to be a tricky one because while McKinney, you know, is good at finishing fights, Bonfim to me is good at winning rounds, right? So I think this is going to be a true test of whether or not Ismael Bonfim can survive the storm, right? Can he survive that first round that is Terrance McKinney? We know that Terrance McKinney is going to come out dangerous and aggressive. We know that he's a threat against anyone in the first round, but ultimately what happens after that is what you need to ask yourself with Terrance McKinney. What I like about Ismael Bonfim on this one is that he's a bit tighter with his striking style. You know, he has that boxing background. The striking defense is solid. I can see that proving to be a big advantage for him as McKinney goes for those big looping shots. But McKinney's also quick, right? So I do expect McKinney to land a few takedowns in this fight. I expect McKinney to have a few big moments early on. But I also, to, you know, his big red flag, I also expect Terrance McKinney to gas out. And I think that's where I'm going to roll the dice on the underdog Ismael Bonfim to be able to survive that onslaught and then just be the better striker, the better overall fighter, you know, really for the last 8-9 minutes of the fight. So most of round 2, all of round 3, that type of thing, if it even goes that far. So Ismael Bonfim to survive the storm and then win the fight is how I'm seeing this happen. Again, I think his stand-up is just too sound for me to ignore. So I'm going with Ismael Bonfim on this one.
Yeah, the Bonfim brothers, man, they made it to the UFC. The younger brother Gabriel is actually supposed to be the better one, right? But I think both of them are legit. I think both are improving. Ismael is the older brother, the lesser of the two. Against McKinney, right? McKinney's dangerous, man. This guy knocks guys out. Really, he knocks them out. And if you look at even the Drew Dober, like that fight, he was landing bombs and he was dropping them. And Dober, it's hard to put him out, right? It's hard to put him even down. Like this guy has a granite chin, one of the top 10 chins in the game. And this guy was able to put him down a couple of times. So you got to really acknowledge the power that Terrance has. It's a tough fight, man, because you can easily see Terrance come out with his athleticism, and again, he has good wrestling, and he comes out heavy in that first round and gets the finish with that power. You can see that. So it's tough, man. But then you look at fights like against Sam Woodson, albeit it was in 2019. He cleaned him out first round. Second round, though, gassed, hard to get the takedowns, and he got finished by a flying knee. I think it's going to be similar to that. Again, it's a hard fight to really predict here. They're in Brazil. I really do like the Bonfim brothers here, man. I think they are legit, man. Kind of like the Pitbull brothers. I think these guys are legit. I think they have the right people around them. I think Ismael is going to be able to defend himself in the grappling. McKinney may get him down, but I like that he has his hands up because even on the Contender Series, he was fighting a guy that has been finishing people. I think it was in ACA. He fought a Nariman Abasov, a fighter that was 28-3. And we're talking about a guy that is getting finishes. I'm sorry, an AMC. And he's fighting guys 32-4, 40-6, 14-8, 20-5, 10-5, getting wins against these guys. Ismael Bonfim went in there, dealt with the power, dealt with the experience of fighting a 30-fight guy, and he pretty much schooled him. He can go 3 rounds, so that's the big thing, the cardio. So I'm gonna bank on Bonfim surviving the early going. I think if he survives that first round, I think it's his fight. So I'm gonna go Ismael Bonfim to use his boxing to get the win.
Fight number 5 of our prelims, Luan Lacerda, I should say, versus Cody Stamann. Lacerda, UFC newcomer, 10-fight winning streak, legitimate grappler. 10 of his 12 wins are via submission. Pretty patient and rangy on the feet from what I've seen from him. I don't think he's the most active striker, but he can strike at least enough to sort of set up that ground game. I mentioned that ground game is sort of his strength. He's going to shoot for those takedowns, but I wouldn't really call him the strongest wrestler. But he is one of those get on the ground by any means necessary type of fighters, right? So not afraid to shoot for the leg and then immediately go on his back and pull guard and things like that, because he knows that he has the ground IQ to get himself into a favorable position. So he can definitely be dangerous, but that is a style that you have to really be careful whenever you're thinking about betting on. He's going up against Cody Stamann, who beat Eddie Wineland back in June. Solid all around. We know that Stamann's pretty reliable, all things considered. Good patient movement around the ring, good IQ, smart striking, a lot of fakes and feints, level changes as well. He has that high level ground game, has the good wrestling. He'll take that body lock approach. He'll take that chain wrestling approach as well. I won't make this prediction too long. I am Cody Stamann all the way on this one. I think we really only see Cody Stamann lose to higher level of MMA fighters. And I don't feel like Luan Lacerda is that, especially as a newcomer. I like Stamann's stand-up a lot more in this fight. I think his wrestling specifically is better. And his overall ground game, I'm going to trust enough to avoid the danger, to avoid any potential submissions coming his way. So Cody Stamann is who I'm going with this one.
Yeah, this is a tough one for me, man. They're in Brazil. I did some video on Luan Lacerda, and he's not bad, man. Like, he's kind of approaches the fights like a Rafael dos Anjos. He's just not as good. Like, he doesn't have the skills as far as the striking goes. He doesn't have the wrestling as him, but he's looking to get the fight kind of in the same. He's trying to look to get the fight in the same position, like Rafael. He's trying to utilize the striking. He mixes in his kicks, but again, he's not there yet. He's gonna have a big jiu-jitsu advantage in this fight, and we know Cody has been submitted. When you look at the striking, he's more leg heavy than Cody is, but Cody I think, is the better boxer in this fight. I overall think Cody is the better striker. I really like his counters against higher competition. For me, this is a tough fight because I'm not sure how good this Luan Lacerda guy is. They're in Brazil, so I'm not sure if this is something where UFC knows something we don't know, and they're pretty much setting up Brazil here. But what I do know is that Cody has experience against good guys, and this guy, yes, he has these 2 wins in his last 5 fights, yes, but he's fighting the top of the top. And when you look at who they fought and who Cody has beat guys that are better than Luan Lacerda. So if Cody just mixes in the striking for like 2-3 minutes, gets a takedown, avoids submissions, gets some ground control, I can see him doing that. He can do that for 2-3 rounds and get the win here. So I'm gonna have to go with Cody, but something about this Lacerda guy that he is a live underdog in this spot. He can strike, or he's trying to strike. He mixes in the punches with the kicks, the leg kicks, and he has really good submissions. This guy, he'll try to go for takedowns, but good luck against Cody with those. But if he can get this to the mat, or if he can somehow get the back, he's definitely going to be it's going to be concerning for Cody, right? But I think Cody's a vet. I think Cody's going to be ready for this, and I think he gets the win here.
All right, let's look at the 6th fight of our prelims, the end of the early prelims. We have Shamil Abdurakhimov versus Jailton Almeida. Biggest favorite on the card, Jailton Almeida -1,000. So I don't really want to spend too much on this at all. Almeida, 12-fight winning streak, 3-0 in the UFC now. We know he's a really exciting prospect in the UFC. He's introduced as a boxer wrestler, and he is a good grappler as well, right? 11 of his 17 wins are via submission, so he has that ability. Explosive takedowns, all of those different types of things. For Abdurakhimov, 3-fight losing streak, lost to Sergey Pavlovich back in March. He's been finished in his last 3 fights, 41 years old. So you got to ask yourself, how much does he still have in the tank at this point? He has a kickboxing style, doesn't really throw a lot though. And again, like I said, I just won't take too much time here. Almeida should win pretty easily. Better striker, more dangerous striker, better ground game. This could be a round 1 finish. That's kind of what I'm anticipating.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. I'm going with Almeida in this spot. Only thing concerning is the size difference. Almeida is going to probably come in at 230, 240, probably 220 to 240, somewhere in there. While this guy he's fighting is like 250, 260. He has fought at close to that. So the other guys have the size advantage. Abdurakhimov. But I just think that Jailton has the advantage in the stand-up. I think Jailton has the advantage in the grappling. So I'm going to have to go with Jailton in this spot. Odds are crazy, can't bet it, but he probably get the finish in this spot.
All right, fight number 7 of our prelims. We're looking at Gabriel Bonfim, the other Bonfim brother, taking on Mounir Lazzez. For this fight, Gabriel Bonfim, undefeated, newcomer, of course, as well. Most of his wins are via submission. He does have a few KOs on his record as well. He has a clean, controlled style of striking, very much like his brother. Has those boxing skills, good counterpunching ability as well. Very sharp with the striking, very fast with his striking as well. And for as many submissions as he has, I wouldn't really say he actively tries to bring the fight to the mat. He's more so trying to stand, but on the ground he is good. He has good IQ. He has good submission ability as well, of course. Mounir Lazzez, on the other hand, beat Angie Lusa back in April. Comfortable and composed on the feet. He has good kicks, good knees in the stand-up as well, good footwork, clean kickboxing. He's a diverse striker. He's going to go for accuracy rather than power, consistent output. I've seen him land takedowns as well, but I wouldn't really include that in his game per se. More so someone that's going to be a kickboxing style on the feet. I think this is going to lead to a good striking match between these two. I think both of these fighters can do a little bit of everything. And it's going to lead to this fight staying on the feet, in my opinion. But I do like Bonfim here. I think he's going to bring that pressure. I think he's going to force a higher pace. I don't think he's going to give Lazzez the space that Lazzez prefers to set up his shots. I can see Bonfim potentially hurting Lazzez on the feet for this fight. I will say Lazzez, not like you can't completely count him out in this one. He is not necessarily a live underdog, but I think there is some decent value that could come on him. But it's like we mentioned for Ismael Bonfim. It's just these two brothers are legit, like you said. And like you said, it's Gabriel who is supposed to be the better of the two. So I'm going to trust Gabriel Bonfim to get it done. More effective striking, potentially even hurting Lazzez. But yeah, Gabriel Bonfim is going to be my pick. And I think there's good value at -175.
Yeah, this is going to be a good fight, man. This is a different matchup than what his brother's getting, Gabriel. Gabriel is getting a striker in this fight. Someone that's going to want to keep it on the feet, has really good kickboxing. But Gabriel has a big advantage in the boxing. As good as Mounir Lazzez is as a kickboxer, his boxing is not up to par, right? It's not really, it's good, but in this fight, he's not going to be the better boxer. Plus, Gabriel's going to be able to march down because he can also threaten with the takedowns. So he's going to be able to be on the front foot in this fight. Mounir Lazzez is going to want to move around to avoid getting in boxing range and also to avoid getting in jiu-jitsu range. Those are two things that are Gabriel can exploit. Let's make it quick. I think Gabriel is going to be able to strike with Mounir. but I think when it comes to the mat, he has a big advantage. So I got to go with Gabriel to get this one done here. Either beats him on the feet with his boxing or gets it to the mat. Yes, Mounir is a dangerous striker, but he doesn't really bring the power. And I think Gabriel's going to have the power advantage as well with his hands. So I'm going to go Gabriel Bonfim to get the win here.
All right, fight number 8. We're looking at Thiago Moisés versus Melquizael Costa. Thiago Moisés beat Christos Thiago back in June. We know that he's pretty well-rounded, likes that calf kick, good overall kickboxing, good in and out movement, pretty composed and polished on the feet, and has that clinch game, right? He can land the takedown just over 1 per fight. Good grappler, BJJ black belt, and definitely showed that ability in his last fight versus Giagos. Costa's a newcomer, on the other hand. He's coming from LFA. He's a southpaw, patient, good jab, a lot of kicks, looks controlled with his striking, and he has a good consistent pressure on the feet, good combinations as well. But I won't be long here because I'm not too fond of short notice fights. Moisés was supposed to fight Garam Kutateladze before he suffered an injury. So Costa's stepping in here with about 2 weeks notice, and I think that's going to be a factor. But either way, I think that Moisés is a higher level fighter everywhere, pretty much, in this fight, and he should get it done. A finish wouldn't surprise me either. So I'm going Thiago Moisés.
Yeah, this is a good fight, a good makeup fight for Kutateladze not able to make it here, but I'm with you, man. I think Thiago Moisés is the better fighter. I like the way in his last fight he just went right to the grappling against Giagos. He didn't play around with the striking. He just went right to the grappling, got it done. And I think he's going to do that here with Costa. I watched Costa, and he's average. He's good, but he's not really he's not really that good. Like he's someone that I could see Moisés is striking with. But I think when it gets to the ground, Moisés is going to have a big advantage. He's going to be able to kind of dictate the fight with his grappling. And I think he's going to go right to the grappling because in the striking, I do think Costa has a slight edge when it comes to maybe not a slight edge, a bit more than a slight edge. I think he's the better striker. But I think Moisés can strike with him. But with the grappling, I think Moisés is going to be able to get on top, transition, get where he wants to be, and dictate the fight that way. So I'm going to go with Thiago Moisés utilizing that grappling to get the win here.
Fight number 9, we're looking at Gregory Rodrigues versus Brunno Ferreira. Gregory Rodrigues, 2-fight win streak, beat Chidi Njokuani back in September. Good overall fighter. We know he's pretty dangerous, good stand-up, good grappling, ton of power as well. In the stand-up, look for him to control the center of the octagon, look for him to stay in control, look for him to apply pressure. Has the takedowns as well, almost 2.5 per, but more impressively, almost 50% on the accuracy side of things. And on top of that, he has 100% takedown defense. Also a BJJ black belt, so he has that high level grappling to go along with the takedown ability. He has the physical strength as well, has that toughness factor. We've seen him eat some big shots. He's been wobbled, but we've also seen him come from behind to win fights. Cardio is something to watch for, but I'm not overly concerned. I think we've seen him gassed in the past just due to the pace of his fights rather than poor cardio itself. And he's going up against UFC newcomer and Brunno Ferreira, undefeated, 9-0, 100% finish rate. 7 of those 9 finishes are in the first round. A lot of switch stance movements, good kicks. He's aggressive with his power and his pace. He's going to feint level change as well as he tries to set up his attack, and he looks comfortable on the ground as well. I've seen him land takedowns. I've seen him land ground and pound. I've seen him make good decisions positionally, just kind of have that sort of overall game to himself as well. Now, Gregory Rodrigues was originally supposed to fight Brad Tavares here before Tavares withdrew. So Ferreira's coming in on just over a week's notice, I think 8 or 9 days notice, if I'm not mistaken. So keeping it short, I got to be Rodrigues all day here. I think he should be slightly better, at least everywhere in this fight. I feel like his striking is a bit more diverse. Again, the takedown defense, I think, is meaningful for this fight. And then the experience advantage, right? Plus, on top of that, the short notice for Brunno Ferreira. So all the cards are sort of stacking in Gregory Rodriguez's favor. I will say round one, to some degree, anything can happen, but at least in those early few minutes. But I think Gregory Rodriguez should take over this fight as the fight goes on. So I'm going with Gregory Rodriguez to get it done.
Yeah, this is a good replacement in Brazil. I do think Bruno Ferreira is a dangerous fighter. Just the way he fights, man. He throws wild strikes. He does have power. Yeah, he's aggressive, right? And Rodriguez can get caught. He's been finished. So it is a dangerous fight for me. But when I look at the striking, I like Rodriguez's straighter punches. That's a big thing. It's going to get to the target quicker. He's going to be the taller guy, the more reach. Plus, he has a big grappling advantage. He's high level on the mat. Like high level, like literally, if this was a grappling tournament in the UFC, he'd be top 5 in his division. That's how good he is as far as his straight jiu-jitsu is, but he doesn't really use it in these fights. He likes to throw hands, knock these guys out. But I think in this fight, if he sees that Bruno's a bit too tough, I can see him going straight to the ground, taking him down, and utilizing that high level grappling and getting a submission. So I like Rodriguez, man. I think he wins here.
All right, final fight of our prelims. We're looking at Shogun Rua versus Ihor Potieria. Shogun had that split decision loss to OSP back in May. Almost everyone had OSP winning that fight, though, so for what it's worth. At this stage in his career, I mean, his stand-up has definitely slowed down. It's one shot at a time, big swings, big misses. Has a decent jab, good calf kick as well, likes to come forward, still going to apply that consistent forward pressure. Still going to be explosive in at moments, or at times, I should say. Likes to actively look for that clinch. He's active in the clinch as well. He's going to look to potentially bring the fight to the ground. We see his takedown average there at 2 per, and good work on the ground. Good ground and pound. We know the grappling is there. Not really a submission threat, though. Ihor Potieria, on the other hand, lost his debut to Nikolai Neguereanu back in July. He's a southpaw, looks pretty comfortable on the feet. He has good hands, good combinations, good forward pressure in his own right, likes to take control of center, so it's going to be interesting to see who gets their way in that sort of mini battle. His striking and his movement looks pretty relaxed as he picks his shots, and he's a finisher, at least in his time before the UFC. 16 of his 19 wins are via finish, including a KO TKO in his, not his last fight, but his fight before his UFC debut. Bit of a padded record, though. His game is, of course, still unrefined in a lot of ways. This is a retirement fight for Shogun. We know that. So, of course, they're going to give him a beatable opponent. But I'm looking at this as a 50-50 fight. You know, on one hand, I'm thinking that Shogun could pressure, clinch, dirty box, do a lot of the same things that Ihor Potieria's opponent was able to do in his last fight. Of course, I'm talking about Nick Neguereanu. On the other hand, you know, Potieria can be the longer, rangier, busier striker with the better movement, find opportunities as well to land those big shots, like he was able to do for moments in his last fight. I tend to lean toward that second scenario that I mentioned there. I don't think Shogun has the pace at this age. The way that, you know, to give Potieria problems the same way that Neguereanu was able to do. And Shogun, I mean, yes, has that opportunity to get him out there early. He has the opportunity to kind of Holly Holm clinch style for 2 rounds. But I think the more likely event is Potieria using better movement, more active striking to win the fight. And I don't think there's anything wrong with saying that. Shogun is definitely past his prime here. Potieria has that finishing ability as well, and it could end in a finish. I will say, though, I definitely don't want to bet on this. I don't think Potieria should be a minus 220 at all. I think this should probably be a pick 'em. So if anything, there is some underdog value, but I wouldn't want to rely on a fighter that's over 40 years old if I'm gunning for a dog. So I am going to go with Ihor Potieria, but I am going to say that this is going to be a close fight.
Yeah, man, this is Shogun's last fight, so they kind of, yeah, you're right. They gave him a guy that he can compete with. Let's give Shogun his flowers, man. This guy, if you've been watching UFC as far back as I have, I'm old. So I'll let you know that I'm old. And if you watch UFC far back as I did, at one point Wanderlei Silva was the guy, right, at 205, in Pride, and in UFC was Chuck Liddell. At one point, those guys were like the top guys in each division. Rampage got crushed by Wanderlei and by Shogun. But at the end of Pride, towards the end, Shogun, because Wanderlei got some losses and Shogun just kept winning. Shogun eventually became the top 205 guy in Pride. He was the guy. This guy, pound for pound, was one of the top guys in Pride. Dangerous guy. You couldn't strike with him. Couldn't get him on the mat. Couldn't take him down. And he was dangerous. And he would finish these guys. He's one of the legends of Pride. So growing up, this guy was one of my favorite fighters growing up. And this being his last fight, I could see the UFC giving him a guy that he's going to look good against. He could look good against Patera because technically Patera makes a lot of mistakes. But I just believe at this point, Patera, one shot, he throws hard. And I think 1-2 shots, I think Shogun's going down. But let's not forget, though, man. Let's give this guy his flowers, man. One of the best light heavyweights of all time. You got to say he's top 5 light heavyweight of all time if you factor in what he did in Pride. But he's going to lose, man, on Saturday against this guy, man. This Ihor Pretoria guy is hungry. He lost his last fight against, what was his name? Let me pull it up again.
It was Nick Negueramanu.
Yes, and in that fight, I actually went with Nick Negueramanu. A lot of people went with Ihor, and I just thought Nick was going to just hold his ground and pretty much beat him down, right? And maybe use some grappling. But he beat him down. I'm not sure Shogun can do the same. And I think in this fight, Ihor has shown in that fight with Nick that he can take shots. It took a lot to get him out. So Shogun's going to really need to knock this guy out. And I don't think he has it. And I think at some point, Ihor is going to land a heavy shot. Again, Ihor is not that good. He's not skilled. He's not great. He'll never be what Shogun did or even do what half of what Shogun did with his career. But I think at some point that power he's going to throw, because he throws heavy, he's going to land. So I'm going to go Ihor to get the win here.
All right, let's take it to the main card. 5 fights on the main card, some really good ones. We're going to start with Paul Craig and Johnny Walker. Paul Craig, UD lost to Volkan Ozdemir back in July. Stand-up is okay. It's Muay Thai-like, a lot of kicks. Doesn't really have the best striking defense, in my opinion. He does have some takedowns, almost 2 per fight. Really good at making positional improvements and opening up opponents for that ground and pound. We know that jiu-jitsu is the name of the game, though, for Paul Craig. That grappling, almost all of his wins are via submission. He wants that grappling match. And again, he's one of those get it to the ground by any means necessary type of fighters, willing to pull guard, willing to, shoot for a leg and start rolling, just really be tricky with it. And it's tricky to bet for or against Paul Craig because he's almost always losing decisively in his fights before having just a really dangerous grappling exchange where he potentially just ends the fight, right? So to that point of losing, he does have that toughness. He has that heart. He's a great opportunist. He never counts himself out. And that's a dangerous fighter, right? I mean, we saw what he did to Magomed Ankalaev a number of years back. Johnny Walker beat Ion Cutelaba back in September. We know he's a big threat early in the fight, very explosive, a ton of power. 15 of his 19 wins are via KO, TKO, and 10 of those 15 are in round 1 specifically. He's explosive as a striker, a lot more kicks than punches, though. He's cleaned up his striking a bit, uses a lot more feints and fakes, bit better technique as well, bit more methodical, bit more patient. But with Johnny Walker, 2 key question marks of his cardio and his chin have both been problems in the past. Ultimately, Johnny Walker is going to be the better striker here. Paul Craig is going to be the better grappler here. And it's just about which way you think the fight will go. I think that Walker is going to have to get him out of there in the first round. Walker's game is predicated on kicks, His hands aren't really that good. And I think that specific factor about Johnny Walker's striking is actually going to provide a lot of opportunity for Paul Craig to get the fight to the mat. Again, you let go of those kicks, you're not as balanced. You give yourself more opportunities to be taken down, whereas a Volkan Ozdemir type of fighter was more boxing. And Paul Craig wasn't able to really implement what he wanted to do. Although Johnny Walker is solid on the ground, I just don't think that's the game he's going to want to play with Paul Craig. Like I said, we look at Paul Craig's last opponent, Volkan Ozdemir. He had that IQ to avoid the ground, to keep it striking. But why could he do that? Because his striking was more boxing based, more hands based. I don't think Johnny Walker has the ability to mimic that. So I think there's really good underdog value here on Paul Craig, just based on his toughness, based on the ground threat that he is, and the type of striking that Johnny Walker is going to show with the kicks is going to provide a lot more opportunities to bring the fight to the mat and look for grappling opportunities. I will say, though, big disclaimer, for whatever reason, I just cannot call a Paul Craig fight correctly. So when I think he's going to lose, he wins. When I think he's going to win, he loses. This time around, I am going with the underdog. I am going with Paul Craig. I think this one sets up well for him, but if he goes lights out in round one, I wouldn't be surprised either. But nonetheless, I'm going with Paul Craig on this one.
Wow. Yeah, this is a tough fight, man. Yeah, okay, I got it, man. So when you look at Johnny Walker, man, this guy is explosive, man. He's gonna be the better striker in this fight versus Paul Craig. He has losses against Jamahal Hill, Thiago Santos, Nikita Krylov, and Corey Anderson. But he has wins against Luis Henrique da Silva, Khalil Roundtree, Justin Ledet, Serkinov, Ryan Spann, and Ian Cutelaba. So this guy does have some wins against legit fighters in that division. He's gonna be fighting a guy in Paul Craig that I don't respect, man. Like I don't like this guy, man. This guy is losing every fight until he wins. Like he gets beaten down, like just like in the Krylov fight. Just like in the like a lot of these fights, he's getting beaten up and then he gets the fight to the mat, gets to the guard, gets the triangle. Really good triangle choke. Even in that fight versus Magomed Ankalaev, he was getting beaten pillar to post for 3 rounds. And this guy got a submission and off his back in the last like 2 seconds or 1 second of that fight. So yeah, he's that type of guy, man. Like if you pick Johnny Walker, you didn't win until the bell rings, because this is the type of guy that he'll make you think he's beaten up and he's hurt, and then you fall into his guard and he locks up a triangle choke, right? I think he has one of the best triangle chokes. I think he has the best triangle chokes in that division. One of the most scariest guards in that division. So he can definitely win the fight. So I definitely hear where Harris is coming from. But I don't think that's gonna happen, man. His fight versus Volkan Ozdemir, that was embarrassing, man. That was so embarrassing. He just kept flopping to his back, trying to pull guard. He was praying, man. This guy couldn't get a takedown. He couldn't really even attempt takedowns after a couple rounds. So his cardio doesn't really hold up as you would think with a guy with his style. I think Johnny Walker is the better guy on the feet. I think on the mat, I think he can hold his own. He's going to be the bigger guy, the more athletic guy. I think he just moves around and kicks this guy, throws a knee. I think he beats him up, man. So I think Johnny Walker wins, man. I'm not a fan of Johnny Walker. I've been going against him for a lot of these fights that he lost. Even the fight he won against Ian Cutelaba, I had no faith in that guy in that fight. But all the fights that he lost, I won against him. And I think this is a fight that he could win, man. I just think that Paul Craig is trash. And I think Johnny Walker, as bad as he is, as the mistakes he makes, I still think he's a better fighter. Johnny Walker coming into the ring 100% gets it done. Johnny Walker coming into the ring at 75%, I think gets it done. So I'm going to go Johnny Walker here to get the win.
Fight number 2 of our main card, we're looking at Lauren Murphy versus Jessica Andrade. Andrade, big favorite on this one at -500. And she's on a 2-fight winning streak after she beat Amanda Lemos back in April. On the feet, we know that she fights in the pocket. We know that she's going to look to keep that distance close. Her hands stay pretty tight. She's going to march her opponents down a little bit, really likes to engage, throws a lot of combinations in those moments, a lot of looping hooks as well, almost like a borderline brawling type of style, but, with control, right? She is physically strong, uses that to her advantage with her wrestling, with her grappling, almost 3 takedowns per fight, over 50% on the accuracy side of things. And she's also a black belt. So she has that top control ability, that grappling ability, decent defensive guard as well. Has the ability to scramble and get back up to her feet if she's taken down. I don't anticipate that in this Lauren Murphy fight. But nonetheless, Lauren Murphy is going to offer up that more, striking type of style, right? I think she more closely identifies as a boxer in terms of her style of stand-up. We know that she beat Miesha Tate back in July. She's going to come forward. It's going to be, solid, consistent boxing, solid, consistent pace as well. She picks her shots pretty well. She's pretty patient, cuts off the ring well, has a decent jab as well. And she uses her jab to set things up. She can load up and engage in combinations as well. Decent striking defense. Physically strong, right? Or respectable 71% takedown defense, but she's definitely good at fighting takedowns off in general. I think it's a pretty good fight. Andrade is always an interesting case because she moves up between 125 and 115, but she has shown that she can be at the top in both divisions, right? I mean, I think it's a really good fight. When I'm looking at how wide the odds are, I can't help but think that Lauren Murphy could be a legitimate value as an underdog, or could have legitimate value as an underdog, I should say. She's taller, of course. She's longer. She's going to use that reach to her advantage. She may be able to fight off takedowns if Andrade attempts them, like she was able to do in the Miesha Tate fight. But I have to trust Jessica Andrade, and I won't take too much longer here. She's more dynamic. Jessica Andrade is. Andrade is more complete. I think Andrade can hurt Murphy, and even if she can't, I imagine that Andrade can stay in the pocket with effective striking and successfully landing those, that takedown or two while being better on the ground. We know that Lauren Murphy's tough, so I'm not really banking on a finish. Even Andrade via decision could be a good value pick here. But at some point we have to factor in age, right? Lauren Murphy, 39 years old, Andrade, 31 years old. And time will catch every fighter. Is it Lauren Murphy's time yet? We don't know. But even if it's not her time, I think Andrade is the better, more complete fighter. So minus the height disadvantage, minus the reach disadvantage, I think she's better virtually everywhere else. So Andrade is going to be my pick for this one. I just wouldn't want to bet on it at minus 500.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%, man. But Harris, man, like Murphy has no value, man. Like you said, she has no value, man. Like she's gonna get crushed, man. She wins fights against girls that she's physically stronger than. If you really look at the fighters she's beaten, she does have in all those fights, she has that strength advantage. And even in fights that she loses, but they give her the decision win, she has the strength to make the fight close. In this fight, she's not gonna be able to do that, man. Andrade is just gonna overpower her in the grappling. And when it comes to the striking, if we were to give these girls ratings out of 10, let's go. Lauren Murphy, out of 10, she's a 4. Andrade is a 6.5, 7, 6.5 for that division. And let's give her a 7 for that division. So she's gonna crush this girl. So I'm gonna go Andrade to get it done. And I think she makes it look easy here, man. Looks good in her hometown. Home country.
All right. Fight number 3 of our main card, Gilbert Burns, Neil Magny. Good welterweight fight here. I think they're both top 10. I think Magny's just outside of the top 10, if anything. Gilbert Burns had that loss, of course, to Khamzat Chimaev back in April. That was a great fight, one of the fights of the year. Improved stand-up. He likes to come forward. He likes to throw a lot of fakes and feints, level changes as well. and it makes him really hard to read at times, and it allows him to, continue to press forward. He has that powerful right hand, of course. We know his BJJ and his grappling ability speaks for itself. Definitely one of the best in the UFC. 20 wins, 9 of those are via submission. He can land takedowns as well, 2 per fight, has that effective top control to go with it. And he's one of those fighters, again, that are confident enough in their grappling and are good enough in their grappling to pull guard and really just, work the ground game from there. And we know how dangerous he is, right? I mean, there's a reason why Khamzat Chimaev didn't really want to go to the ground against Gilbert Burns. I think that kind of speaks for itself for who Khamzat has shown himself to be. Neil Magny, on the other hand, had that win versus D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez, back in November. He's one of those fighters, well-rounded, can do a little bit of everything, long-rangey striker, light on his feet. He's going to use his kicks effectively as well to keep range. Decent ground game. Wouldn't say it's a dominant type of ground game in any way, but he lands almost 2.5 takedowns per fight. His accuracy is over 40%. Just 57% takedown defense, but he does use his length to his advantage to be hard to take down at times. And I mean, we can't ever forget to mention with Neil Magny, the cardio is there as well as the constant activity. But I'll keep this short as well. I'm Gilbert Burns all day on this one. I feel he's the higher level fighter. What's interesting here is that both of these guys are the same age, 35, 36 years old, but I feel like Neil Magny's age is starting to catch up to him a little bit. I feel like his striking has slowed down a step. I don't think he wants to try Gilbert on the ground either, right? That Khamzat fight showed me, or not showed me, but showed everyone that Burns definitely is that real threat with the striking specifically. Plus, again, being that threat with the grappling. And for Gilbert Burns, you have to imagine, number 5 fighter in the division. He's going to be the hungrier of the two. He wants to keep his rank. He wants to stay relevant in that top 5. There's no way you can let Neil Magny take your ranking at this point in his career, right? So I'm looking at Gilbert Burns as just being the better overall fighter. I don't think Neil Magny is going to be able to handle what's coming his way for this fight. And I think Gilbert Burns is going to be looking to get back into the win column after what happened in that Khamzat fight. So Gilbert Burns is going to be my pick. I mean, again, how many of these do I put on parlays? There's a lot of big favorites on this card. I don't know yet, but I feel pretty confident with Gilbert Burns getting it done.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. But these odds are crazy. Are those odds real?
Those are very real. Minus 500,
That
basically.
is crazy because if those are the odds, I'm definitely gonna. If those odds are real, I'm definitely gonna make a bet on the side with Magny, man, because he's definitely live in the spot. He has a big reach advantage. If he negates the grappling, he should have a big advantage on the feet. But Burns is the real deal, man, and I think Burns is gonna all Burns has to do to win this fight. He just has to watch the fight. I know it was back, I think it was 2017, 2018. He has to watch that fight with Rafael dos Anjos. Just watch that fight because you can do the exact same thing that Rafael dos Anjos did. Even get a submission in an earlier round. But yeah, Rafael utilizes grappling. Definitely saw an advantage there, and Neil couldn't resolve it. And if you look at the way Dos Anjos fights and the way what's his name again? Oh man, forgot his name today. I'm joking. Gilbert Burns. They're similar, not similar, but Gilbert Burns can do what he can do, and Gilbert Burns can probably do it better. So I can see Gilbert Burns going straight for the takedowns, not playing around and striking. And Magny has been submitted before, so I wouldn't be shocked if there's a submission. But I could see Gilbert Burns getting 2 out of 3 rounds easily in this spot.
All right, let's look at our co-main event of the evening. This is a fight that we have broken down 4 times now. We're looking at Deiveson Figueiredo versus Brandon Moreno, part 4. We know, of course, they're very well matched with one another. Otherwise, we wouldn't be seeing a part 4 of this. Figueiredo has the power advantage. He has the better calf kick from what I've seen or from what I've been seeing. Moreno has the cleaner boxing, right? When I look back at that third fight, Moreno was a little bit hesitant, and Figueroa was leading the charge. He was controlling the center of the octagon. Neither fighter was too active with their striking, and I think that heavily favored Figueroa, as he has been someone that could have slowed down in the past, right? So that lack of activity is benefiting Figueroa at that point. The scrambling, the ground exchanges were very 50-50 in that fight. Something's got to give for this fight, though, right? Someone's going to have to do something different. In that last fight, I think Figueroa's power was the difference. Moreno had moments, but I feel like Figueroa had bigger moments. And I see a lot of the same things for this fourth fight. It's hard to call. It's definitely a 50-50 fight. I think it's still going to be a super close fight. I think there's still going to be opportunities on both sides. I think both fighters are going to have their moments, but I'm kind of seeing similarities to that third fight specifically, right? I think Figueroa is going to have bigger moments, more power, kind of, get Moreno off balance a little bit more often, maybe sneak in the takedown a little bit more often. But this one's tough. I mean, I feel like both of these guys at 100%, I like Figueroa. Is Figueroa going to be 100%? I don't know. Being in Brazil makes me more confident that he will be. But of course, I think about that second fight and just how weird it was. And that's always in the back of my mind in terms of going against or going for Figueroa. But I mean, again, I'm judging it basically off of how that third fight went. In addition to Figueroa being in Brazil this time around. And I think he's going to get his hand raised for this one again, and finally close off this rivalry, close off this chapter of both of their lives. But Davis and Figueroa is going to be my pick. Super close fight, though. Just going to enjoy it as a fan, not betting at all.
Yeah, I think this is a fight of inches, man. Like, these guys had such a close fight the last one. I think it's inches, man, and I think it's hard to really pick a winner in this spot. In the last fight, Moreno, he pretty much was winning for most of the fight. He was winning for most of the fight, but the knockdowns, right? Davison has the equalizer. He has the heavy shots, right? And Davison was able to get him down at certain points in certain rounds to win that round, even though if the knockdown wasn't there, he would have lost some of those rounds. So this is a tough fight because Figueroa has shown that he's ready. He's ready to defend that title. He has that power. He has the grappling. He has the strength advantage. But Moreno has shown that even though he lost his last fight, he's improving a lot more than Figueroa in a game of inches. The guy that's improving might have the edge in the next fight. Now, this is a fight that you can't really feel confident in either way. That's how close these guys are. That's how close these fights are. But yeah, it's going back and forth, man. I was on Figueroa, I was on Moreno. I sat on Moreno, and then I finally thought, I was like, the power that Figueroa has could be the equalizer. But I don't think that's going to be the case, man. I'm actually going to go with Brandon Moreno in this spot. I actually think that he's the guy that's improving more. Again, you can't really predict this fight. There's no way to do it because we've seen the fights. They're close. And there's spots where one guy looks better in the other spots. But you can't really predict this and feel confident. But the only thing I'm basing this off is Moreno's motivated. He lost his coach. What's that guy's name again, man? Harris, man, help me out. What's his name again? The coach that was gambling.
James Krause.
Yeah, James Krause. So he lost his coach. So I didn't even look where he's at. I think this is a fight where you got to look at the weigh-in and see how they look because Figueroa obviously has problems making this weight. Moreno has no issue at all. 5 rounds. I'm gonna go with Brandon Moreno to get this one done this time.
All right, let's look at our main event then. We have Glover Teixeira versus Jamahal Hill. Light heavyweight title on the line here. I think it's interim if I'm not mistaken, but nonetheless. Glover Teixeira lost to Yuri Prochazka back in June. Solid striking. Striking is looking cleaner over time, but he is hittable, right? He seems to get wobbled often, 43 years old, so that's not surprising. His chin isn't the most reliable at this point. High level ability on the ground. We know that he's good at finding takedowns, especially when he's hurt. Really good at surviving. When he does land those takedowns, good top control, good positional improvements, good at staying on top, good ground and pound, and of course, that submission ability as well. But Jamahal Hill is pretty dangerous on the feet, right? We know that's where he's going to keep the fight. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. All three of those fights have been finishes. Southpaw, good power, good movement, has some speed as well for the division. Very light on the feet, good choice of shots as well. And the cardio doesn't really seem to be an issue for him, but it was a good thing for him to get a round 4 TKO in his last fight in terms of moving into that 5-round experience. I'm looking at this fight and I'm looking at a lot of variables. I mean, we know that Teixeira has the experience, of course, the grappling, the takedowns, and Jamahal Hill has just 65% takedown defense. Thiago Santos was able to take Jamahal Hill down 6 times in their last fight. So that's going to give some insight as to what Teixeira can do. We know that Jamahal Hill has the power, the striking, the ability to be dangerous at any time in this fight. And we know Glover gets hit, right? The fact is, I think there's great value on both sides. Coin flip type of fight with the amount of variables involved. And I mean, to some degree, this just has to be a guess, right? As to how this fight could go. I think that Jamahal Hill can potentially hurt Glover early. And I think that could be potentially all he's going to need for this fight. On the other hand, it wouldn't surprise me if Glover just uses his experience. But I'm going to go with the young gun. I'm going to go Jamahal Hill. I think he's going to potentially hurt Glover. I'm anticipating a round 1, round 2 knockout type of thing. I think 43 years old Glover's chin isn't going to last him in this one against a big striker in Jamahal Hill. So I'm going Jamahal Hill to get it done.
Yeah, this is a tough one, man. This is a tough fight. We got up and coming Jamahal Hill. When I saw him on the Contender Series, I really thought this guy could be the next guy. He impressed me that much. I see something in him. And against Teixeira, though, this is a tough matchup because we know Teixeira, even though he's old, this guy can scrap. He can still go, and his striking's okay. But his ground game at this point is where he makes his money at. So Hill's been taken down. Man, it's tough, man, because I can see Hill coming out here, just styling on Teixeira, knocking him out, keeping it on the feet. But I actually don't think that's going to happen, man. I think Teixeira gets his title back. I think at some point he gets us to the mat. I think if Hill survives the ground, I think he's going to come back a different fighter, really gassed, just trying to survive. I think that he's going to waste a lot of energy. And even on the feet, I think Teixeira is dangerous because he mixes it up with his takedowns really well. Again, I wouldn't be surprised. Jamahal Hill knocks him out in the first minute or two. But I see as the fight goes on, the takedowns, 5 rounds. I think Teixeira's going to get him to the mat. He might just need 1 takedown, and that could be it. So I'm going to go with Teixeira one last time, man. This guy's getting old, man. He's getting up there, but I think this is a fight that he could win.
All right, so let's take it to Vegas at that point, and let's start with some underdogs. I'll read them out. Daniel Marcos is an underdog. Zara Fairn, underdog. Nicolas Dalby is an underdog. Ismael Bonfim, Luan Lacerda, Mounir Lazzez, Shamil Abdurakhimov, Melquizael Costa, Brunno Ferreira, Mauricio Shogun Hua, Paul Craig, Lauren Murphy, Neil Magny, Davison Figueroa is a slight underdog, and Glover Teixeira is an underdog as well.
Okay. Who's the underdog in the Daniel Marcos, Simon Oliveira?
The underdog in that one is Daniel Marcos.
Okay, I'm gonna go with Daniel Marcos.
All right. My underdog pick is going to be, I like Ismael Bonfim to get it done against Terrance McKinney. I think he's gonna survive and then take over. And then in terms of favorites or parlays, what are you taking a look at?
All right. I don't know the odds, man, so bear with me. I'm gonna go with okay, I'm gonna go with Gabriel Bonfim, Thiago Moisés. What are those odds at?
Bonfim is minus 186, and Moisés is a big favorite at minus 400.
Okay. And let me throw in there Gilbert Burns. I think he gets it done.
All right. So those three fights would be a plus 131. So $100 will return or I should say flip a profit of $130. And for bigger bettors, $250 will return a profit of $326. My parlay, some similar picks. I am maintaining Thiago Moisés on there. I am maintaining Gabriel Bonfim as well. But I am going to add Cody Stamann to that. And I am going to add Gregory Rodrigues. That would be a plus 216. So $100 will return a profit of 215, and $250 will return a profit of 539. But let's sign off on that note. This has been UFC 283, Glover Teixeira versus Jamahal Hill. Full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Of course, subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up on this video, participate in the comments as well. But let's sign off. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris in our usual fashion. Let's get this money.
Let's do it.